Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that many people are not addicted to substance, but to suffering? You see, there are feelings we chase not they bring joy, but because they bring familiarity. Anger, resentment, worry, these emotions are not strangers to us. In fact, they are so well known that for some, they've become companions, are not just feelings anymore. They are habits, and like all habits, they come with a cost. Ask yourself this, do I feel more alive when I'm at peace or when I'm in conflict? If you observe deeply, many discover they feel more awake when something is wrong, when there is drama, when there is something to fix, when there is someone to blame. Why? Because stress triggers a rush, a biological cocktail in the body. Cortisol, adrenaline, and other stress hormones flood the system, and the body gets used to it. Emotions are not just fleeting experiences, they can become habits. When a certain emotion is repeated often enough, it no longer remains a reaction. It becomes a default state. This is how many people unconsciously fall into emotional addictions without even knowing it. Think about it. How often have you seen someone who is always angry, always anxious, or always blaming? It's not that life constantly hands them misfortune. They have unknowingly trained themselves to live in that emotional state. Repeated emotions create neurological pathways in the brain, and the more you activate a specific feeling, the more natural it becomes for your mind and body to return to it. The brain and body form patterns together. When something triggers stress, the brain sends a signal to the body, releasing chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline. But over time, the body becomes familiar with this chemical state. It begins to crave it. Even when there is no real danger, the mind may begin to search for reasons to worry, reasons to feel tense, running the pack, reasons to stay in that familiar emotional state. This is the root of emotional addiction. Your body asking for a familiar chemical high, and your mind obliging by finding stories, memories, or scenarios to match. Can begin in small ways. A person experiences stress at work. Over time, stress becomes a normal part of their identity. They associate feeling productive with feeling stressed. Eventually, if things are going well, they might unconsciously sabotage peace because it feels strange. Or take another example, someone who has been betrayed in the past may hold on to resentment. At first, it's a protective response. But after a while, running anger becomes part of who they are. They feel justified, strong, and safe in that emotion, running through the park. They may not even realize that it's draining them. The danger lies in the subtlety. Emotional addiction isn't dramatic like substance addiction. It hides behind logic, behind justification. You might say, I have every right to be upset. And maybe you do. But the question isn't about being right. It's about what you're choosing to experience again and again. The more you revisit pain, the more your body and mind normalize it. And that normalization is what turns an emotion into a habit. To change, you must first become aware. You must watch your emotional patterns like a scientist observing data. When you react to something, pause. Ask, is this reaction automatic? Running through the park, is this feeling helping grow? Or am I just replaying the same emotional script I've always known? Running through the park. This type of inquiry opens the door to transformation. By understanding that emotions can become habits, you reclaim the power to choose which feelings you want to reinforce. It's not about denial or forcing happiness running through the park. It's about recognizing your patterns and deciding whether they serve your highest self or keep you trapped in the past. The human mind has a deep tendency to gravitate toward what is familiar, even when that familiarity brings pain. This is one of the most overlooked patterns of human behavior. Often, people stay in cycles of stress, unhappiness, running through the park, and inner turmoil not because they enjoy it, but because it feels normal. The suffering becomes predictable. Predictability feels safe to the nervous system. This is the strange paradox. People don't always seek happiness. They seek familiarity. If misery is all someone has known for years, it becomes a kind of comfort zone. And stepping out of that emotional zone, even into peace, can feel uncomfortable. Familiar misery creates a false sense of security. You may know someone who stays in toxic relationships even though they constantly feel hurt, or someone who always expects the worst to happen even in positive situations. Why do they do this? Because their minds have been trained by past experiences to associate tension with safety. Calmness, silence, or stillness feels threatening. Running the park. Because the unknown feels more dangerous than the known misery. So they cling to worry, cling to stress, and cling to the emotions that make them feel in control, even if those emotions are hurting them. This pattern is not conscious. Operates silently beneath the surface of awareness. Many people say they want to feel peace, to be happy, to be free from inner conflict. But when peace actually arrives, it feels foreign. The mind starts asking questions. Why is it so quiet? What if something bad happens? This feels too good to last. And soon, person will unconsciously create a problem just to return to the emotional state they are familiar with. That is the power of the familiar. Breaking this cycle requires honest self-reflection. You must look within and ask yourself, what emotional state do I spend most of my time in? Is it joy, peace, curiosity? Or is it fear, anger, guilt, or worry? Then ask, when things are going well, do I feel at ease? Or do I start to feel restless, waiting for something to go wrong? If restlessness arises in calm moments, it's a sign of addiction to emotional struggle. It's not because peace is wrong for you. It's because your system doesn't yet trust it. The shift begins when you gently train your mind and body to trust peace. This means learning to be still without needing stimulation, learning to be quiet without needing chaos, and allowing yourself to feel joy without guilt. It won't feel natural at first, but over time, just like you adapted to familiar misery, you can adapt to familiar peace. You can teach your nervous system that it is safe to relax, safe to be still, and safe to feel good without expecting pain to follow. This process takes awareness and patience. But once you start choosing peace over panic, presence over prediction, and clarity over chaos, you slowly rewire the emotional patterns of your life. You move from surviving familiar misery to living with conscious peace. And that is a shift worth making. Running the park. The connection between the body and the mind is far deeper than most people realize. Running through duck, every thought you think produces a chemical response in the body. Every emotion you feel sends signals through your nervous system, being your physiology in real time. Over time, if you keep experiencing the same emotions, especially ones related to stress like fear, anger, or sadness, your body begins to adapt. It becomes used to those internal conditions. The body doesn't know whether these emotions are good or bad. It only knows what is repeated, and what is repeated becomes familiar. Eventually, the body begins to crave these emotions just as it would crave a drug. This is how people become chemically addicted to the hormones of stress. Running through the park, this addiction happens subtly. You may notice that whenever life becomes too calm, your mind begins to wander into problems that don't even exist yet. You begin to imagine worst-case scenarios, dig up old arguments, or create new fears. What you're really doing in these moments is searching for a reason to trigger stress chemicals again, because your body wants the feeling it has grown used to. Running through the park. Your biology is not working against you. It's simply following the patterns you've programmed into it over time. Do the park. If the most common emotion in your life is anxiety, then your body will begin to crave the adrenaline that anxiety provides. It will push your mind to find reasons to feel that way. What makes this more dangerous is that these responses become automatic. In the park, the body starts acting like the mind. Even if your conscious thoughts are peaceful, your body might still feel tense, on edge, or restless. That's because it's running on old emotional programming. You've trained it unintentionally to operate under stress. And like any addiction, the withdrawal from that emotion feels uncomfortable. When you start meditating, practicing mindfulness, or seeking stillness, your body might initially rebel. You may feel agitated, impatient, or bored through the park, but this discomfort isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is changing. To break the cycle, you must begin to recondition the body to new emotional experiences. You need to teach your system what calm feels like, what gratitude feels like, what stillness feels like. This doesn't happen through force, but through gentle repetition. Slow down your breath. Pay attention to your thoughts. Begin noticing when your body tenses and ask yourself, what emotion am I feeding right now? In that awareness, you create space to choose a different response. Over time, the body will begin to learn. The cravings for stress will weaken. The pull toward conflict will lessen. Running the park and a new kind of emotional chemistry will begin to take root, one based on peace, trust, and presence. You will no longer be a slave to emotional reflexes. Instead, you become the conscious director of your inner state. This is not suppression. This is mastery. Mastery over your emotional programming, over your nervous system, and ultimately over the quality of your life. Awareness is the beginning of all transformation. Without awareness, no change is possible. You can try to force yourself to behave differently. You can repeat affirmations. You can read books and watch motivational content. But unless you develop a deep and consistent awareness of your own emotional habits, those efforts will remain superficial. Most people are not aware of what they feel throughout the day. They might notice moments of anger or sadness, but they don't investigate where those feelings come from or how long they've been living in that emotional state. This unconscious living leads to repeated cycles of pain, stress, and conflict. To truly break free from emotional addictions, you must become the observer of your inner world. This means you begin to witness your thoughts and feelings without immediately reacting to them. You ask, what am I feeling right now? Where is this coming from? Is this a real response or a conditioned one? When you start observing in this way, you shift from being the emotion to seeing the emotion. This shift is powerful. Through the park, it breaks the illusion that your feelings are who you are. You begin to see them as passing weather, not permanent truths. This practice requires honesty and courage. Many people avoid self-awareness because they are afraid of what they will find, are afraid of confronting the pain, the fear, the resentment that lives inside them. But ignoring it does not make it go away. In fact, what is not seen becomes stronger in the dark. Awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. You may not like what you see at first. Now you can clean, organize, and heal. Now you have clarity. The moment you recognize a toxic emotional pattern, you've already taken the first step toward breaking it. That recognition weakens its power over you. You can no longer act unconsciously. When you catch yourself falling into worry, anger, or victimhood and say, running through the park, here it is again, you are already separating yourself from the automatic behavior. And that moment of separation is where choice becomes possible. You don't need to fix everything at once. Awareness itself begins the healing process. When you observe your emotions without judgment, they begin to lose their grip. You don't suppress them and you don't feed them. You simply notice them, and in that noticing, your inner energy starts to shift. The nervous system calms. The breath slows. The mind becomes quieter. This path of awareness is not dramatic. It doesn't give you instant relief or a sudden breakthrough. But what it offers is deeper, long-term liberation. running through the park. A gradual freeing from emotional patterns that have held you captive for years. You begin to feel space inside yourself. Space between thought and reaction. Space between trigger and response. And in that space, a new life begins to grow. A life of presence, peace, and conscious choice. The doorway to that life is awareness. And once you walk through it, you will never live the same way again. Change does not happen by accident. It is a deliberate process of reshaping the way you think, feel, and respond to life. Just as you can train your body through physical exercise, you can train your emotions through mindful practice. Emotional patterns, whether helpful or harmful, are learned behaviors, repeated responses to specific situations that over time become automatic. The powerful truth is this: what is learned can also be unlearned. And what is automatic can be consciously redesigned. To change your inner landscape, you must become intentional with how you relate to your emotions. Every emotion has a rhythm. Anger may come like fire, fast, hot, and consuming. Sadness may arrive like a wave, slow, heavy, and steady. Anxiety like wind, scattered, restless, and unpredictable. Once you become aware of the rhythm of your emotional states, you can start training yourself to slow down and intervene. You learn to pause before reacting. You create space before expressing. You stop feeding the old reaction and instead choose a new one. The tools for reshaping your inner world are simple but profound: breathness and attention. Breathe is the bridge between the body and the mind. When emotions rise, the breath often becomes shallow, fast, or erratic. But when you take control of your breath, slowing it down, deepening it, you send a signal to the nervous system that you are safe. You shift out of the fight or flight response and into a state of calm presence. This single act can begin to rewire years of stress-based emotional habits. Stillness is equally powerful. In a world addicted to noise and speed, stillness becomes a form of rebellion, a quiet revolution within. Taking time each day to simply sit, to observe your thoughts without reacting, to feel your emotions without judgment, is how you start cleansing the emotional residue from your system. At first, the mind will resist. It will tell you there's no time, that you're wasting energy. But with consistency, the stillness becomes nourishment. It becomes your training ground. Just as a warrior trains in silence before battle, you train in stillness before facing the world. Attention is your most valuable inner resource. Where you place your attention, your energy flows. If you constantly focus on what's wrong, what's missing, or what might go wrong, you will strengthen those emotional patterns. But if you begin directing your attention toward growth, toward gratitude, toward learning, your emotional experience will begin to transform. It's not that problems disappear, it's that your internal response to them becomes wiser, more balanced, more centered. Changing your emotional patterns is not about pretending to be happy all the time. It's about becoming emotionally skillful. It's about knowing how to navigate your inner world with intelligence and care. When you master your emotional responses, you stop being a victim of circumstances. You become a conscious creator of your inner experience. And from that mastery, a deeper sense of freedom begins to emerge. One that is not dependent on the outside world, grounded firmly in the strength of your own mind and heart. The emotions we feel most often become our reference points for life. They shape how we see the world, how we interact with others, and even how we perceive ourselves. If you've spent years feeling anxious, you begin to view life through a lens of fear. If you've lived with frustration, then the world may appear unfair or hostile. These emotional references form the emotional home your mind returns to even when your external circumstances change. That's why many people, despite achieving success, still feel empty, restless, or unhappy because they haven't changed their inner emotional set point. To transform your life, you must create new emotional references. You must teach your mind and body what it feels like to live in peace, clarity, and strength, not just for moments, but consistently. This process is not just about feeling better, it's about creating a new emotional identity. One that is not defined by pain or past experiences, but by conscious intention. You begin by asking, what emotions do I want to live in? What qualities do I want to embody every day? For example, instead of associating strength with aggression or dominance, you begin to associate it with calm and control. You learn that true power doesn't come from shouting louder or reacting faster, but from staying grounded when everything around you is in chaos. You begin to associate courage not with recklessness, but with the ability to face your fear and still move forward with grace. You train your system to experience peace not as a rare event, but as your default state. This emotional training requires repetition. The brain and body learn through consistency. Just like you built emotional habits through years of stress or conflict, you now build new emotional patterns through repeated conscious practice. Each time you choose calm over chaos, you reinforce a new neural pathway. Each time you respond with compassion instead of criticism, you create a new emotional reference. Over time, these choices accumulate. They become your new emotional home. One of the most effective ways to install these references is through daily rituals. Spend a few minutes every morning in silence, breathing deeply and connecting to the feeling you want to cultivate. Whether it's peace, strength, gratitude, or clarity, feel it in your body. Let it become familiar. Let it sink into your nervous system. Visualize how you would walk, speak, and act if that emotion guided your day. This isn't just imagination, it's reprogramming. The mind learns through emotional experience. So don't just think about new emotions. Practice feeling them. Speak with the tone of calm confidence. Breathe with intention. Move your body with awareness. Let your daily actions become a training ground for your emotional evolution. Eventually, what once felt unnatural becomes second nature. When you build new emotional references, you don't just change how you feel, you change who you are becoming. And from that inner shift, your entire life begins to transform. Not because the outside world has changed, but because the one experiencing it, you, has. Mastery is not about achieving perfection. It is about gaining control over what once controlled you. Emotional addiction thrives in the absence of awareness and discipline. But when you begin the process of self-observation, when you learn to pause before you react, and when you consistently choose to act from a place of wisdom rather than impulse, you are walking the path of mastery. This path is not defined by grand, visible milestones, but by quiet inner victories. Every time you choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and presence over panic, you are reclaiming your inner authority. Most people live in reaction. They wake up and are immediately pulled into the noise of the world, the news, social media, obligations, and stress. Without realizing it, their emotions are being hijacked by external conditions. One negative comment, one challenge, one unexpected inconvenience can spiral them into anxiety, anger, or despair. This is not mastery. This is emotional slavery. To be free, you must shift from reacting to responding, and from responding to consciously creating your internal state, regardless of what the outside world is doing. The one who is emotionally addicted lives on autopilot. The one who seeks mastery begins to interrupt that autopilot. In the beginning, mastery feels difficult. You may slip, you may fall back into old patterns. But what matters is your intention and consistency. A martial artist does not become skilled after one practice session. A musician does not master their instrument in a week. In the same way, emotional mastery is a lifelong discipline, and every day offers you a new chance to practice. It is important to understand that emotional mastery is not suppression. It is not about pretending everything is fine or pushing away emotions. Rather, it is about meeting each emotion with awareness and choosing how to relate to it. You can feel anger and still act calmly. You can feel fear and still move forward with grace. You can feel sorrow and still stay rooted in presence. This ability to carry emotion without being carried away by it is a mark of true inner strength. The more you practice, the more emotional clarity you gain. You start noticing your triggers. You start understanding your habitual thought loops, and most importantly, you begin to see that you have a choice, always. A choice in how to respond, a choice in what energy you bring into a room, a choice in how you treat yourself and others. Over time, your energy stabilizes. Your presence deepens. People may start to notice a shift in you, but more importantly, you notice it in yourself. You feel less reactive, more calm, more centered. And that becomes your new baseline. This is the result of inner work, of choosing over and over again to return to yourself. Mastery is not the absence of emotion. It is the wisdom to know which emotions deserve your energy and which do not. And when you reach this state, you are no longer a servant to the storm. You become the calm eye within it.